Hi everyone, and happy Easter if you're watching this today. So this video is just going to be a short introduction to some different techniques that you can use for your spelling. Now, spelling is still really, really important even at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, and it's become more so since the syllabus has changed to the 9-to-1 English GCSE English language syllabus. Since that's happened, spelling and grammar now take up a bigger chunk of marks than they did before. So it's really important that students keep working on their spelling all the way through the Key Stage 3 and the Key Stage 4, and that those techniques and things that they've learnt in primary school of having the weekly tests, that they carry on with that same approach. So I'm going to give you a few techniques because I know it's not always that easy learning spellings, particularly if your child has dyslexia. So I'm going to give you some different techniques, some different suggestions of ways that you could improve their spelling, and then each week I'm going to be popping 10 new words. All the words are taken from the document released by the government, which says the words that they think all students should know by the time they leave primary school and enter Key Stage 3. And in my experience, actually, very few students can spell all those words by the time they come into Year 7. There's still lots and lots of areas where there's potential for improvement with their spelling, lots of things to be addressed in their spelling. So I'm going to go through some techniques with you. First one is the most traditional, kind of old school one. The idea of look, say, cover, write, and check. So I'm going to take the word, use an example of difficult. Up here. So I'm going to look at it, have a good look at the spelling, the patterns in it, maybe note the double F in there, and then I'm going to say it out loud, difficult. Then we go to cover it up. I'm going to write it out underneath and then take my hand away and check whether I got it right. And then if I haven't got it right, I'm going to go back to the beginning, have another look, have another say, and then keep doing that until eventually, hopefully, I get the spelling right. The problem is there are some students, though, particularly students with dyslexia or other special educational needs, they might just go around in circles and find it really, really hard because their brain doesn't necessarily work in that way when it comes to learning spellings. So that's why I'm going to give you, a few others and perhaps some slightly more outside of the box ways of doing spelling. So another way to learn your spellings is chunking. So this means breaking your word down into sections based on the syllable count. So for difficult, I'm going to go one section. Here we go. So I've broken it down into 3 parts here. So I've got the diff. So you can learn that bit first and gives you more time to perhaps reflect on the fact, you notice the pattern, the 2 F's in it, and then the ick. And then I might learn to finish the cult as well, difficult. And again, that might help notice patterns like the fact that it's an sounds cult at the end of the word. This approach can sometimes take students back to phonics a bit. And the idea, when they learn to read, they learn to cement the words and then blend them back together. So it's kind of using that similar approach. But for some students, there's another approach with this that might work better, and it's the idea of bringing in sound. So it's what I call syllable tapping. So instead of just looking at it, they actually tap out the syllables as they're saying it. So you go difficult. And that can work really effectively, remembering that sound. It's bringing in another sense to it, another pattern that students can remember. And with that in mind, similarly, another technique is to draw the word shape. Again, this can work really, really well with dyslexic students who need to make different links. Just looking at the word isn't enough. They need to bring in other senses, multisensory learning techniques. So I'm going to take the word balloon, because this one works quite nicely. So I'll write my word balloon out. And now I'm going to draw around it, draw shape around it. So that means I'm going to go up for the and then across, and then up again, and then box it in like that. And some students do really well with that approach, with learning to recognise the shape of a word. And it might help them, for example, remember that it's got 2 L's in it. And some students even say like the shape of the word even looks a bit like the balloon going up as well with that. So it helps them make those different associations, different connections. Another technique that is quite popular is mnemonics, and that's using rhymes, using different patterns. So one you probably remember from school, the I before E except after C rule as well, except of course then we have another list of exceptions where that doesn't work, but that's the general principle. So I'm going to give you another example, one I quite like. I'm going to take the word because, which is always a tricky one, a very frequently used word, but one that is misspelled a lot. So, there's my word, because. So, the rhyme that remembers because, go, big elephants can't always understand small elephants. And if we look at each of these words that we have written, we've got the B, E, C, A, U, S, and E. So we've spelt out the word because in that sentence. So that's another technique that students find really helpful. Something else is just good old-fashioned muscle memory. So for me, I quite like this. It's boring, but for me, sometimes just writing out the word repeatedly, because I'm getting that muscle memory. My hand is starting to remember exactly how the word should feel. It's not just going by the look of the word, bringing in another sense, thinking about how it should feel. So that can work well for some students as well. It's boring, time-consuming to learn something by muscle memory, but it is effective. And if students have got particular words that really trouble them, doing muscle memory can really, really help with that. It could also help, with other subjects as well besides English, science, maths, geography, where they've got particular terminology, and perhaps if there's something that really, really, doesn't stick in their head, just getting the muscles to remember it can be really useful. Then another thing is to practice putting the words into a sentence, seeing them in context. Some students do a lot better when they can just see the word in context and start thinking about what it actually means. That can help them remember how to spell it as well. They need to actually see the words in action, not just look at them alone on the page. And a final one, again, that can be a bit tricky maybe to do, but I was trying to share some resources for this, and I do have a really nice writing games lesson, but word games, and particularly like students that I've worked with love playing Countdown on there, and it's easy if you just type in, again I can share one into the group, but if you just type into Google even like a countdown simulator, there are so many on there, and students just love playing with the words there, playing Countdown, and even like good old-fashioned Hangman as well can help as well. So playing games with them, even at Key Stage 3, even if they think they're maybe a bit grown up for them, can really, really help. In the writing skills lesson, which I'll share later on, there's one task where students have to spell every single word wrong, and of course you can't misspell a word on purpose if you didn't know how it was spelt in the first place. The students often engage really, really well with that activity, and then games like you can't use a word that you can only use words that have the letter E in them, and then the next round you can't use any word that has the letter E in it as well. So getting them to be playful with language, playful with words as well, can all help. The other one, which I haven't actually mentioned in a slide, but the good old-fashioned, reading, seeing the words. I suppose it comes a bit back to putting them into a sentence, but yeah, seeing the words in action. And, the more you read them spelt correctly, the more that is going to stick in your mind as well. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to put our first weekly round of spellings up on there. I'd love to know how students are getting on with them, if they're having any problems with them, if that approach is helping them, perhaps if they've tried any of the techniques I mentioned in this video and are finding those useful as well. I would absolutely love to know. So I'll see you all later. Have a lovely Sunday and a lovely week ahead, and I'll see you soon. Bye!